Indiana Pacers. Now here is a team that looks set for a huge drop-off. And I would have predicted a huge drop-off regardless if Paul George is playing or not. A lot of that has to do with the improvement, I think, of a lot of the teams in the East. I think last year, a lot of teams, not only were they lacking talent, they were lacking healthy talent. So a lot of teams, they may have actually given the Pacers a lot more trouble. They weren't at full strength. And this year, I think a lot of these teams that Indiana sort of just had their way with, they're going to find it's not going to be as easy. I really think Frank Vogel is not a good coach. He did not adjust at all last year. He has one mode, and that's big defense, long arm, and which I like, but it didn't work towards the end of the season. He stuck with it. And it looks like the most important player, who's not Paul George, the most important player is going to be Roy Hibbert. I don't know what's going on with him. If Roy Hibbert can play like he did in the beginning of last season defensively, they have a chance to really go far in the playoffs. No, I don't think championship, but I think that but if he plays like he did at the end of last season, there's no chance. They have no chance because there is no one else behind him, and there's really no one else. There aren't many players in the league that can provide the type of defense that Hibbert can at that position. And again, that's the most important position defensively on the court. And with him struggling, that's going to be a real difficulty. They lost Lance Stevenson, who assuredly is not as talented as Paul George, but there's something about Lance Stevenson, that he provided that I really feel the Pacers lacked, and that was a sense of passion and urgency, because a lot of these dudes, Paul George, Hibbert, George Hill, who else? They play with a real lack of urgency. And it's, I don't mean, Stevenson played, he had a fire. These guys are lacking that fire. Now David West, he has fire, but his fire is a little too angry, I think, sometimes. And but he's a fantastic player. I don't know, but he's not going to win games for the Pacers on his own. Who else did they pick up? They picked up Rodney Stuckey, which is very interesting. I don't know what he does for them, but he's interesting. They still have C.J. Watson, great bench point guard, which really doesn't help them. I mean, it doesn't hurt, but doesn't really help them. They have Ian Mahinmi, who's always showed a lot of potential. Maybe he can step up this year. They picked up Chris Singleton from Washington, who is supposed to be a defensive stopper, 6'9", plays shooting guard, small forward. So I think they want him to try to fill that Lance Stevenson role, but he has not shown much. I really don't see a lot from the Pacers this year. I think they're really going to be surprisingly bad, and that won't be surprising me.